Myles Garrett's sideline frustration, Denzel Ward's body language. These aren't isolated moments. They're symptoms. As the Browns fumble through a stagnant offense and fail to ignite any rhythm under center, their leaders are showing cracks. It's what happens when talent gets benched for politics and decision-makers treat quarterbacks like property instead of playmakers. Kevin Stefanski's unwillingness to put Shedeur Sanders on the field is no longer just a coaching choice.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
It's a trigger point for a locker room poised to unravel. The stakes in Cleveland go far beyond a few bad games. A young quarterback with real tools is being denied the most important currency in the NFL, experience. And the cost isn't just his development. It's morale, identity, and momentum. When Tom Brady called out Stefanski, it wasn't just a headline. It was a warning shot. Ego, not merit, is running the Browns show. Unless that changes, the team isn't just risking a losing season. They're risking collapse from within. Tom Brady didn't mince words. He didn't dance around it. He didn't veil it in vague platitudes about system fit or leadership strategy. No, Brady came out and said what so many players, fans, and analysts have been thinking for weeks now. Kevin Stefanski's treatment of Shedeur Sanders is not just questionable, it's actively damaging. This isn't some offhand remark either. When Brady speaks, especially publicly and directly, it's deliberate, it's targeted, and in this case, it's a full-on indictment of the Browns' coaching culture. Brady, a living symbol of opportunity and earned greatness, sees a talented young quarterback with all the tools, arm strength, field vision, mental composure, being shelved. Not for lack of talent, not because of health, but because of politics, because of ego, because somewhere in the Browns' front office and coaching staff, someone decided the appearance of control was more important than the reality of success. That's what Brady called out. The Browns have been hiding behind a narrative of a back injury for Sanders, which might have held up if the quarterback wasn't out there every week launching passes in pregame warm-ups like nothing was wrong. If this were a health issue, there wouldn't be visible proof to the contrary. And yet there's Sanders is showing off the exact traits that got him into the league in the first place, while still being denied a single meaningful opportunity. And this is where things get real. When a team pretends its decisions are about readiness or physical condition, but then contradicts that publicly through player actions, it destroys trust. Not just with the fans, but with the locker room. Because you can't ask elite athletes to give everything on the field while feeding them dishonest explanations off it. You think Myles Garrett hasn't noticed? You think Denzel Ward's sideline demeanor is random? These guys are smart. They've been through different regimes. They know when something doesn't add up. And right now, nothing adds up. There's no football logic that supports keeping Sanders sidelined. You have a struggling starter, a stagnant offense, a locker room running low on belief, and you're telling everyone the best option is to keep doing the same thing? That's not strategy. That's stubbornness disguised as leadership. And that's exactly what Brady was talking about. It's ego, plain and simple. Brady wasn't just calling Stefanski out for one bad decision. He was exposing a larger trend. Coaching staffs that refuse to pivot, even when the evidence is slapping them across the face. Organizations that would rather preserve their reputation than admit they made a mistake. And in doing so, they waste talent. They lose seasons. They fracture teams from the inside out. Sanders' skill set isn't theoretical. It's proven. He handled pressure in college like a veteran. He's fast, accurate, calm in the pocket, and he processes defensive schemes well beyond his age. And yet, he's stuck in a bizarre purgatory, watching the team flounder while the coaching staff pretends he's not ready. Ready for what exactly? The bar seems intentionally vague. The requirement's conveniently movable. And that's the problem. When readiness becomes a matter of opinion rather than performance, the door is wide open for ego to override logic. This isn't just costing games. It's costing the Browns a chance to grow. Sanders is in a crucial development window. These are the reps that define a career. And every week he sits, that opportunity gets smaller. And for what? Because Stefanski doesn't want to admit that the original QB plan failed, Because the front office doesn't want to concede that a mid-season shift will expose cracks in their process. The worst part is, they're doing this all out in the open. Fans can see it. The media sees it. Brady sees it. There's no hiding anymore. When one of the most respected figures in football directly criticizes your approach, the PR mask falls off. And then there's Sanders himself. He hasn't lashed out. He hasn't thrown anyone under the bus. He's kept it professional, aside from a few social media signals, liking posts calling for him to start. That's the modern athlete's version of a message, subtle but clear, and it's impossible to ignore when it's part of a broader pattern of silence from the team. What's also telling is what this saga is doing to the locker room dynamic. Leaders thrive on accountability and transparency. They don't mind adversity. They mind being lied to. They mind watching talent rot on the bench while the team spirals. And if things continue on this trajectory, the real fallout won't be limited to Sanders. It'll affect everyone. The locker room's belief in leadership is on thin ice. Players aren't going to publicly revolt mid-season, but they'll check out quietly. That's how seasons collapse. Not with fireworks, but with indifference. And all of this is avoidable. The solution has been sitting there the whole time. Play the kid. Let Sanders get real reps. Let the team see that leadership is capable of adapting when something clearly isn't working. That you're not so far gone into your own power structure that you're willing to lose just to maintain the illusion of control. The damage being done to Sanders' development is real. He's not being protected. He's being delayed. And every week he doesn't get to step on the field is a week lost in his trajectory. The Browns aren't just jeopardizing the season. They're stunting the future of a player with franchise potential. And Brady's voice in all this matters because he's lived the opposite. He knows the power of one shot. He knows what happens when a young quarterback is trusted, even when the situation is chaotic. That's how legacies are born. That's how teams change. But in Cleveland, it's the same old story. Opportunity choked by ego. They've done this before. Time and again, they fail to develop talent. Not because the players aren't good, but because the environment suffocates growth. And now they're on the brink of doing it again. If they don't pivot now, if they don't bench the excuses and hand Sanders the keys, this season is done. And not just in terms of record. It'll be another failed chapter in the Browns' long history of what could have been. There's still time, but not much. The post-bye stretch is critical. If the team continues on this path, it's headed for disaster. 1-7, maybe 2-6, and a complete implosion by December. And once the locker room fully gives up, it's over. You don't come back from that. But if they give Sanders a shot, if he's finally allowed to lead the offense, even with rookie mistakes, that's a signal to the team that change is possible. That growth matters more than being right. That the franchise is willing to risk short-term discomfort for long-term reward. That's the leadership Brady was championing. That's the culture he represented. And it's everything the Browns are missing right now. Let Sanders play. Let the team breathe. Let the fans believe. And if the staff can't find the courage to do that, then maybe the problem isn't under center. It's on the sideline. If you're watching this unfold and thinking, enough is enough, you're not alone. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should Shedeur Sanders start now? Did Brady say what needed to be said? And how much longer can Cleveland go before the whole thing falls apart? Hit like if you're tired of the excuses. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns of the chaos behind the headlines. And share this with anyone still pretending this is about development. Because it's not. It's about power. And it's costing the Browns everything. Let's call this what it is. A franchise that finally has a young, talented, high-upside quarterback. And they're letting politics and pride keep him locked to the bench. It would be comical if it weren't so deeply Cleveland. This isn't the first time the Browns have mismanaged a quarterback. But this time, the stakes are higher. Because unlike past misfires, Shedeur Sanders didn't walk in with question marks about whether he could handle pressure. That box is already checked. Unlike past maybe picks, he has the physical tools, the poise, and the experience. He doesn't just look the part. He is the part. And what does he get in return? He gets buried, silenced under a questionable injury label, excluded from reps, ignored by a coaching staff more interested in protecting their narrative than nurturing their next potential franchise cornerstone. And now the clock is ticking louder than ever. Every week Sanders sits, the frustration around him compounds. Not just for fans, not just for media, for players. Veterans like Myles Garrett don't need to rant publicly to make their point. Their silence, their body language, their mid-game energy. It's all a direct reflection of a team that doesn't believe in what it's being sold. There's only so long professionals at that level will play along when they know the best talent isn't being used. And when Tom Brady, someone who lived through that kind of dismissal early in his career, goes public with criticism, that's not gossip. That's a warning. That's one of the most respected voices in football saying, this isn't how you win. What Brady saw, and what anyone who's paying attention sees, is a broken process. A coaching staff stuck in self-preservation mode. An offensive plan that lacks spark and direction, and a GM and coach working overtime to justify the unjustifiable. Let's talk about what it actually means to let Sanders sit. You're not preserving him. You're not protecting him from being overwhelmed. You're not letting him adjust to the speed of the game. You're wasting him. Development in the NFL doesn't happen in the film room. It happens in live game reps. It happens with decision-making in real time, with mistakes under pressure, with adversity on third down. That's how quarterbacks grow. That's how leaders are made. Not in practice. Not on the scout team. On the field. Brady knows this because he lived it. His shot came after an injury. He got in, stayed in, and earned everything else. And he's looking at Sanders now and seeing a version of himself, ready, overlooked, and dangerously close to being squandered. And that's the tragedy of what Cleveland is doing. Not just stalling a season. Not just losing winnable games. But squashing the very thing that could transform their trajectory. Sanders is showing patience. But patience has a shelf life. And you know who else is watching? Every other team in the league. You don't think front offices are taking notes? Of course they are. They're seeing a first-round talent with starter upside rotting on the bench behind vague injury excuses and questionable coaching loyalty. You better believe they're circling. If Cleveland doesn't give Sanders the shot he deserves, someone else will. And when they do, and when he thrives, this will all go down as another chapter in the Browns' long, cursed saga of mismanaging quarterbacks. Not because they didn't draft well. Not because they didn't have talent. But because they chose pride over performance. And here's the hardest part for fans to accept. If nothing changes, the season is already lost. There's no salvaging momentum when your team doesn't trust its own direction. No fixing chemistry in the locker room if players feel like decisions are being made for the wrong reasons. No turn the tide if your potential spark, your young quarterback, isn't even allowed to try. That's the real damage. You can have all the talent in the world. But if the coaching staff refuses to adapt, refuses to admit that a mistake was made, then it's all wasted. It's just another carousel of mediocrity. Another season spent evaluating instead of evolving. And yes, giving Sanders the ball will be admitting failure on the initial plan. But so what? The best franchises in football pivot. They change. They put ego aside and make the best decision for the team, even if it means swallowing pride. Kansas City traded up for Mahomes and benched the successful Alex Smith. Green Bay rode it out with Jordan Love despite criticism. Houston put full faith in a rookie C.J. Stroud. And now look at them. You think any of those teams regret taking the risk? Meanwhile, in Cleveland, you've got an offense in neutral, a locker room on edge, and a young quarterback who could change everything, if only he were allowed to. The coaching staff can keep hiding behind medical reports, vague status updates, and he's not ready talking points. But the longer this continues, the more transparent it becomes. This isn't about readiness. It's about optics. It's about not wanting to admit the backup plan should have been the starting plan all along. And when your decisions are motivated by fear of being wrong, you've already lost. There's only one way out of this. You give Sanders the ball. You stop playing the PR game and start playing actual football. You give the locker room a reason to believe again. Because as of now, there's nothing to believe in. And that's more toxic than any loss. The schedule won't get easier. The pressure won't go away. But what can change is a direction. Right now, they're spinning in circles. Let Sanders throw. Let him scramble. Let him fail, even, because every pass, every snap, every mistake, that's a step forward. And right now, the Browns aren't moving forward. They're frozen in fear, trapped by a coach who'd rather stay wrong than risk being proven wrong. The players feel it. The fans feel it. And now, Tom Brady said it out loud. What more needs to happen? Does the team have to implode before someone in the front office wakes up? Because let's be clear, if this continues, it's not just a quarterback controversy anymore. It's a full-blown organizational crisis. It's culture rot, and it starts with decisions like this. Decisions where the best player doesn't play, where the coach is more worried about how it looks than how it performs, where the locker room's faith in leadership erodes day by day until the season is unsalvageable. That's where Cleveland is headed. Again, unless something changes. Unless Sanders is given a chance to do what he's already shown he's ready for. Play, lead, grow. If they do it now, there's still time. Still games to win. Still a future to shape. Still a locker room to unite around a young leader with real potential. But every week they delay, another wasted opportunity. Another step toward collapse. Another headline that says, they've done it again. And this time, the fans won't forget. At this point, no one is buying what Kevin Stefanski is selling. You can call it a development plan. You can call it protecting a young quarterback. But if you strip away all the buzzwords, all the vague medical updates, and all the media-trained quotes, it's just this. A franchise willingly sitting on its best chance of hope because the people in charge are too proud to pivot. Let's be honest. This is no longer just about Shedeur Sanders not starting. It's about the why. And that why is what's dragging this entire team toward another Brown-style implosion. Because if the front office and coaching staff truly believe in transparency and meritocracy, the values they preach every time they shove a mic in their face, then Sanders would have been under center weeks ago. Instead, they're playing defense in press conferences, while the team's offense can't even find the end zone on Sundays. And this is a decision that could define Stefanski's tenure. Because it's not just a tactical failure. It's a philosophical one. By refusing to play Sanders, he's made one thing crystal clear. He's more committed to being right than getting it right. And when you start making decisions to protect your ego instead of your locker room, you lose everything. You lose trust. You lose leadership. You lose the very culture you're supposed to be building. Now look around. What does Cleveland have? A frustrated defense putting in elite-level performances with no support. A locker room full of veterans watching a spark rot on the bench. A fan base, as loyal as they are tortured, who just might stop showing up. And a quarterback controversy that should have been an opportunity, but is now a slow-burn disaster. And worst of all, a generational quarterback prospect being wasted during the most crucial phase of his development. This isn't hypothetical. These aren't growing pains. This is a self-inflicted spiral, and it's getting harder to watch every week. Just think about what Sanders has done to earn the chance. He put up top-level numbers in college against real pressure. He demonstrated leadership and resilience in chaotic situations. He walked into Cleveland with more upside and mental readiness than most rookie quarterbacks. He's shown up early. He's stayed quiet. He's done the work. And when the starting quarterback went down, when the moment actually arrived, he got benched anyway. They wrapped it in a back injury narrative. But then there he was, warming up like nothing was wrong, throwing tight spirals with no sign of discomfort. Active, engaged, ready. You can't hide that. You can't lie about a player being physically unable to play while fans are watching him throw pregame bullets on camera. At that point, the excuse becomes worse than the decision. It's insulting to Sanders, to the fans, and to the intelligence of anyone who watches football. Now layer that on top of Tom Brady weighing in. Brady, the face of underdog to legend. Brady, the guy who was once buried behind a veteran until one injury gave him a shot, and he never gave it back. When he speaks, people listen, and he didn't hold back. He didn't suggest Stefanski was just being cautious. He called out the truth. When a player is clearly talented and clearly ready, there is no excuse for not letting him develop on the field. Brady didn't name names for the sake of drama. He did it because he understands what Shedeur Sanders is being denied. It's not just playing time, it's progress. And every week Sanders sits as a week of growth lost. A week where he could be learning, adjusting, reading real NFL defenses, building chemistry, making mistakes and correcting them. Instead, he's left to stand on the sideline while the team bleeds out in slow motion. That's not coaching. That's negligence. And the locker room knows it. You can feel in the way this team plays, tight, hesitant, uninspired. You can see it on the sidelines, glances that speak louder than any words. The leaders are disengaging. The pulse is fading. Why? Because nothing demoralizes a team faster than knowing your best players aren't being allowed to compete. It says the wrong things matter more. It says decisions aren't about the team anymore. They're about optics, politics, ego. And that's when you lose the room. Not with some dramatic team mutiny. Not with locker room brawls or viral tantrums. It's quieter than that. It's body language. It's eyes cast down on third and long. It's a defensive captain walking past the offense like they don't exist. It's the invisible unraveling of belief. And we're already seeing it happen in Cleveland. Which brings us to the front office. Because this isn't just a Stefanski problem anymore. It's a Browns problem. Andrew Berry and the entire upper management group are either complicit or paralyzed. And neither option inspires confidence. If they truly believe Sanders isn't ready, they owe the city a better explanation than a back-tightness claim that gets disproven on live TV every week. And if they do know what they have in Sanders, but are choosing not to play him out of fear of exposing prior mistakes, then this isn't just mismanagement, it's malpractice. At this rate, even if Sanders gets a shot later this season, the damage may already be done. You can't rewind lost reps. You can't relight a locker room's fire once it goes cold. You can't rebuild trust with fans once they decide they've been lied to again. But there's still time to shift the narrative. If Stefanski has any shot at saving this season, or his credibility, he needs to hand the reins to Sanders now. Not after another blowout loss. Not after more public shaming. Now. Because that's what real leaders do. They admit mistakes. They pivot. They sacrifice their pride to do what's best for the team. That's what Brady was getting at. It's not just about Sanders. It's about how a coach responds when the plan stops working. It's about having the guts to face the mirror and make the hard call. And right now, the Browns are failing that test. Let Shedeur Sanders play. Let him lead. Let him fall, get back up, and learn what it really means to be an NFL quarterback. Because that's what this league is built on, not perfect plans, but imperfect players rising when it matters. If Cleveland refuses to give him that shot, they don't just risk this season. They risk repeating the same tragic cycle that has haunted this franchise for decades. Draft, hype, mismanage, repeat. And this time, they won't be able to say they didn't know better. So what's your take? Is Stefanski in too deep? Has the locker room already turned the page? Does Sanders need to demand a trade just to get a shot? Let me know in the comments. If you're as tired of excuses as everyone else, hit that like button. Share this with someone who still thinks Shedeur should wait his turn. And don't forget to subscribe, because you know we'll be here when this saga hits its next meltdown moment. Because it's not a question of if anymore. It's when.